There were race riots in Leeds last week. Does anyone remember that? Because the mainstream media want to pretend like it didn't happen. Well, last night, Leeds was burning again.
Can you move the board so you can get out? Hang on, get a out. This car's coming out, so move that side. Go on. Whoa. Move that side. Move that side.
Meanwhile, on the streets of Sadiq Khan's lawless London, criminals now steal from supermarket vans in broad daylight without any fears of repercussions. That's the climate in which an army officer was stabbed 12 times with a 10-inch blade in a 20-second rampage outside his Kent barracks in broad daylight, in an incident predictably being put down to mental health. Listen to the horror. Just awful what is happening to this country. As the Conservative commentator Darren Grimes tweeted, a British army officer now in critical condition isn't being treated as a victim of terrorism. Nope, it's all down to mental health, they say. Picture this. The poor officer stabbed a dozen times with a 10-inch knife, his screams piercing through the air. Folks initially thought it was just a typical road rage incident until they saw the officer's wife, desperate and begging for help. And our supposed lunatic, he licked the blood off his blade like it was some sick treat. Now let's get real. You don't waltz up to an army barracks looking for a military target and then pull the mental health card. It's a farce, plain and simple. It has all the hallmarks of the murder of Lee Rigby over a decade ago. Please God, pray for this man that he somehow manages to pull through. All we got from the new Home Secretary Yvette Cooper were platitudes. Shocking and appalling. Yes, we know. But do I have any faith that this Labour government is going to do anything to stop the crime wave being caused in large part down to the illegal and legal flood of migrants into our country? Absolutely not. Indeed, the Home Office today appeared to want to delete the term illegal migration altogether. Can you believe this? They ludicrously now refer to it as irregular migration. We know the consequences of a decision like that, attempting to pretend the problem isn't there by simply allowing illegals to stay and offering to take more illegals from Europe. It's a capitulation that could change the shape of the UK forever. As Nigel Farage said today, Labour wants to bury illegal immigration as a subject, and they are now using the word irregular. We will not let them get away with it. And thank God Reform UK is in Parliament, because at Slippery Starmer's first ever PMQs today, Rishi Sunak didn't ask one question about anything other than Ukraine, the war the globalists want to go on forever. It was down to Reform UK's new MP for Great Yarmouth, Rupert Lowe, to ask the question that really matters.
Rupert Lowe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituents in Great Yarmouth have little doubt that uncontrolled legal and illegal immigration since 1997 has damaged and disrupted their community and undermined their public services. Does the Prime Minister agree that importing millions of people with no thought whatsoever to the brutal consequences has failed our country? I know the good people of Great Yarmouth would much appreciate a yes or no answer to this straightforward question.
Good question, Rupert.
I'm not sure I agree with his numbers, but look, I do think that it's serious that the previous government lost control of our borders. Record numbers have crossed the Channel since the Leader of the Opposition, when he was Prime Minister for 18 months, 50,000 people crossed the Channel. It's a serious issue that requires a serious answer. And that is why we will set up our Border Security Command to take down the gangs that are running this vile trade. What we won't do is waste further time on a gimmick that cost a fortune and remove just 4 volunteers.
It wasn't a gimmick, it was a deterrent. And Starmer has no idea how to stop the votes. But if the Conservative Party has given up on fighting Labour's open border policy and Reform UK keeps that sort of pressure up, they will soon be the moral opposition. But to react now, it's time for the uncancelled interview with Ezra Levant. And it's a great pleasure today to be joined by the pioneering founder of Rebel News, a man who is a Canadian human rights activist, free speech advocate, big-time Justin Trudeau critic, and the host of the brilliant Ezra Levant show. And Ezra, it's great to have you here. So much to talk about today, but I just want to get your reaction first to what seems to be a complete capitulation by the new UK government in terms of controlling illegal immigration at all. In fact, it's almost like they want to pretend illegal immigration is no longer an issue. We're just going to call it irregular migration and allow all of these folk, as you well know, mainly young working age men, many criminals, to stay in the country.
Right. I mean, that's one way to solve the problem of illegal immigration is just rename it. Canada has gone one further. We have quadrupled the number of legal migrants to Canada. I don't even think we acknowledge any of them are illegal. Tens of thousands of people who come here on student visas, for example, once they're across the border, they simply declare themselves to be asylum seekers. I want to say the UK's policy doesn't just affect the UK. People get in the dinghy, cross the channel. Once they're in the UK, they can make their way to Northern Ireland and then just walk across the border. And it's actually causing a cascading problem in Ireland. I met a bunch of migrants in just outside of Dublin who were all full of British slang, like, hey, gov, just using fun British slang that they don't use in Pakistan, that they don't say in Syria. I felt like I was on the streets of London or Manchester. These fake refugees have been hanging out in the UK, and either they thought they might be sent to Rwanda in the past, I don't know, or they thought they could get a richer deal in Ireland, but now there are tens of thousands of fake refugees in that country that pass through the UK. It's crazy.
It is, and I really want to talk to you about your reporting in Ireland, actually, because it's been fascinating to see this country, which is actually considered pretty socially conservative, go extreme woke and allow their country to be overrun. So what I'll do is set it up with some of your reporting, and I can get you to contextualize as we go along. So this was a really fascinating interview that you conducted with the local councillor, Glenn Moore.
It feels like dark times, that your people are killing each other over something that we feel we should have control of. We don't want this country to be flooded with thousands, hundreds of thousands of undocumented males. Like, you keep saying women and children, it's not. We have the videos. Everybody has videos, thousands upon thousands of videos. Like, it's lies upon lies upon lies, and people are waking up going like, there's something wrong. It's a sinister feeling the Irish people have, and that's what's causing people to show up.
Such powerful words. And also, Ezra, you spoke to a local Irish woman who was protesting, who also reflected that sort of anxiety.
Thanks for coming over, really appreciate it. We have obviously nobody to speak on our behalf except for we've one local media. But I want to know what the plan is. Bringing all these men into Ireland, young single men, putting them in a tent. What is the plan?
And Ezra, how astonishing that it's you and it's Rebel News, a brilliant Canadian independent outlet that is giving a voice to the ordinary people of Ireland, because the MSM in both the United Kingdom and Ireland has become so corrupt.
I've traveled to probably half a dozen countries to see how mass migration is handled. I've been to the Netherlands. I've been to France. Of course, I've been to the UK. I have to say, Dan, that the Irish are the first community I've seen push back en masse. That city councillor you showed a moment ago, Glenn Moore, he's an elected city councillor. When he attended at a protest, he was pepper sprayed by police, but he didn't bend the knee. Let me just tell you a really quick story about that place. You probably saw those tall concrete blocks. There is an abandoned paint factory in Dublin that's huge, and it's empty. And the government suddenly decided they're going to put in at least 500, but maybe many more single military-aged migrant men there. Just put them in the factory and turn it into, I don't know, like a urban refugee camp, except for right across the street is a kids' play place and a kids' movie theater and a Burger King. And the local community is saying, what are you doing? You're putting 500 single men right across the street from basically playgrounds. And that neighborhood called Coolock is a lower income neighborhood. So they're already deprived of services. They don't have a lot. And the government has just announced, ta-da, fait accompli, 500 men moving into that neighborhood. So there have been daily protests. Some local Irish youth threw a couple of bottles at police. So boom, in come the riot cops, pepper spraying and beating everybody. But the Irish don't bend the knee, and they've come back again and again. One more anecdote. I visited a tiny village called Dundrum. About 180, 200 people live there, very small, and there's a beautiful country hotel. Dan, the government has struck a deal with that hotel to stop using it as a hotel, kill the tourism in that little village, and to bring in 280 single military-age migrant men. So the town has less than 200 people. It's a village. But the government has announced it's bringing in 280 migrant men. There's no consultation, there's no engagement, there's no appeal, there's no discussion. It's just in one fell swoop they will end centuries of Irish life in Dundrum. And this is happening all over Ireland. But I've mentioned I've studied this issue in half a dozen countries. Ireland is the first place I've seen fighting back in the way they are. And it's very interesting to see. And I bet you feel that way as a Brit. You're a lot closer to it.
Indeed. And what was great is that you also tracked down some of these migrants, and while they didn't answer, I think they're part of the issue. They need to be given a chance to have a say. So this is what happened there.
Aren't refugees usually women and children? Did you guys destroy your documents before you came over? I hear that happens a lot, that people get on a plane, but then they shred their documents. Did you guys do that?
But first, you know I have promised to talk to you about products on this show that are actually life-changing. Now, this one is really fun, a little bit more personal, but let me tell you, the fellas watching are going to completely get it, and the ladies would do very well to treat their husband or boyfriend, because it really is a game changer. Remember, us men want our grooming routine to be a one-and-done deal. Well, the days of using the same trimmer for your face and privates are over, thanks to our friends at Manscaped. They've come up with the ultimate package to keep your hairs trimmed from 12 to 6. So introducing the Beard and Balls bundle, featuring the Lawnmower 5.0 and the Beard Hedger. And I know what it sounds like, but we're not actually talking about this sort of lawnmower. You can actually get precision trimming for all areas, even the sensitive ones, and get your man manicured as freshly cut grass. So I'm talking about a trimmer for the moneymaker, another for the boys downstairs. This trimmer gets it right the first time, being gentle on the skin in all the delicate places. And with 2 interchangeable skin-safe blade heads, you can choose between a precise trim or a smooth finish. And did I mention it's waterproof, so you can trim in the shower and avoid making a mess everywhere. Next, let's talk about the Beard Hedger, because whether you are going for a neat stubble or a full-on lumberjack look, this trimmer has you covered. It features a titanium-coated stainless steel T-blade and 20 length options, which means you can achieve any style you want with just one small twist of the zoom wheel. And like the lawnmower, the Beard Hedger is also waterproof, so you can handle your beard grooming right in the sink or the shower even, without worrying about water damage. And with up to 60 minutes of runtime and an LED charge indicator, you'll never be caught mid-trim or with a dead battery. It genuinely is such a gentle product. No more cuts. You can keep your loved one happy, and it will increase your confidence. Plus, the great news is today you can get 20% off and free shipping with the code Outspoken at manscaped.com. I repeat, 20% off and free shipping. Just type Outspoken into the code box at manscaped.com. No more juggling multiple tools or dealing with subpar results. Just efficient, effective grooming wherever you need it. For the premium grooming experience, trust Manscaped. And what sort of behaviour are these migrants bringing to Ireland? Not those specific men, I should point out, but you've posted this really shocking video of a woman in a supermarket who was horrified when a migrant started to take pictures of her children.
What are you doing taking pictures of my child?
Sorry.
What are you doing taking pictures of my child?
Just for me.
Why are you doing? He's after being taking pictures of my child. He's after taking a picture of my child. He's after taking a picture of my child.
I doing that.
Who are you taking pictures of? Don't be taking pictures of my child.
And I mean, this is happening every day, Ezra. These sorts of incidents.
Taking pictures is the least of it, as we know from the UK, whether it's in Rochdale or Telford or Rotherham. Things can get much worse, and these grooming gangs that typically are foreign nationals come in and target what used to be a high-trust society. Imagine a small town in rural Ireland. Everyone knows everyone. You know what I mean by a high-trust society? Everyone looks out for each other. When we were in Dundrum, people said, "Who are you? What are you doing taking pictures?" Because we were filming the street, and even just filming the street, locals said, "Who are you?" And that might seem suspicious or paranoid, but that's how a town looks after itself. You bring in hundreds or thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of foreigners who come from a low-trust society where women are not allowed out on the streets precisely because they'll be taken advantage of, where kids don't play out in the streets precisely because there are marauders. What we see is a clash between immigrants from a low-trust society being dumped, and I say dumped because they're just planting hundreds of them in this town of Dundrum. And the Irish, I think, are being erased, and I say that because they're the indigenous people of their land. The Irish never colonized anyone. The Irish, didn't move there. The Irish never took slaves. In fact, they themselves were taken as slaves by the Barbary pirates. So here you've got the local indigenous community that's been there for thousands of years, and they're saying, what is happening to us? And I don't understand why the Irish government, including nationalists like Sinn Féin, who I thought were so Ireland for the Irish, why is everyone trying to destroy the Irish nature of that country? That I do not understand, Dan.
No, it is extraordinary that even Sinn Féin has gone woke on certain issues. Sort of a bit of a bizarre twist of events. But look, if we look at this from a macro level, Ezra, the importance of the independent media has never been more acute. Rebel News, obviously Canadian-based, you've made a big difference there, but you are interested in taking your guerrilla form of reporting around the world.
Yeah, we've had success. For example, we have a great journalist, I know you've talked to him before, Avi Yamini, based in Melbourne, Australia.
Yes, great guy.
Which was really a hot spot for the lockdowns during COVID.
Yeah.
We also, every year, we go to Davos, Switzerland, to the World Economic Forum. Now, we're not allowed in. They never accredit us, but we do sort of street journalism. I don't know if you ever saw it, but a couple of years ago, I bumped into the CEO of Pfizer, Albert Bourla, just on the street, along with Avi, and we peppered him with questions. Again, didn't get a lot of answers, but putting the questions to dead silence tells a story, too. I really believe, Dan, that in this day and age, if you've got a smartphone, you can be a journalist. And I think all you need is a little bit of courage and the ability to go and tell a story. And I think that, as you're showing with your program, anyone can break through the old cartel. It used to be only a handful of channels run by a handful of decision makers, really gatekeepers. That era is over, and now everyone can have their say.
Yeah, and thank God for that, because as you know, I was in the mainstream media. I tried to do it from within the system. I was shut down, and I now believe it is only organizations like Rebel News that are going to hold these governments to account, but also critically, as you say, in terms of your reporting from Davos, hold the globalist organizations to account. And of course, when it comes to politicians, you are one of the biggest critics of Justin Trudeau. But I wanted to play this clip from another independent Canadian media outlet that you have praised in recent days, the Counter Signal, that managed to track down Trudeau on a beach. It feels like he's been trying to avoid any real scrutiny from anyone other than patsy journalists who are in his pocket. And it was quite an extraordinary confrontation. So let's have a watch and I'll get you to respond off the back.
I ask you though? Sorry, sir. I'll just ask you super quickly. Your minister said you're going on vacation. No, don't put your hands on me. Don't put your hands on me.
More than any political leader on the face of the earth, Justin Trudeau carefully manages his media appearances. Who's allowed access to him? Who can get into press conferences? Who he'll arrest if they get too close? Who he'll sit down for an interview with?
You had your media advance call the RCMP because I was going to ask questions that you didn't want. I wasn't the CBC, I wasn't CTV, I wasn't Global News, so you had to get arrested, so we came in.
Following his catastrophic by-election loss in Toronto, the Prime Minister has gone into hiding. He refuses to call a caucus meeting, and his administration is hanging on by a thread.
Like this right here?
Okay. Sure, thank you. Are you looking for a replacement right now?
No, I am absolutely not. I am running in the next election.
Are you concerned at all about your poll numbers?
No.
How good was that, Ezra? Because initially it was like he wanted a full-on physical confrontation, and eventually he realized, actually, I'm going to have to talk to this independent journalist from the Counter Signal.
Yeah, that's Cian Bexley. I'm proud to say he's an alumnus of Rebel News, and he's doing great.
He's one of yours.
Well, I mean, I can't take credit for his latest work, which was his own idea, but I love that style. Cian figured out where Trudeau was going to be on vacation, and you can see he went in very low-key, just with his cell phone, not a big, old-fashioned legacy media camera. So he and his camera person went in very low profile. They saw Trudeau on the beach after scoping him out for hours. Now, you saw that Trudeau had his security detail with him, but Cian managed to get right face-to-face with Trudeau. There was a bit of a tense exchange, but you're exactly right. Trudeau quickly did the math and realized if he were to have Cian arrested or shoved away by police, it would look awful. So he did give him 10 minutes. And Cian got some good questions in. Trudeau really pushed back, saying, "You're interrupting me on my vacation. How dare you? I work harder than most Canadians." That's not a good thing for a politician to say, especially when times are tight economically. And it was very exciting. And no legacy journalist would have done that. They wouldn't have had the entrepreneurial spirit to do it. And they would never have done something that might damage their friendship with the ruling elite. The legacy media, not just in Canada, but I'm sure it's the same in the UK and around the world, they value their connections and their influence. They want to be invited to the Christmas parties. Cian Bexley, the young journalist there, valued getting his questions in more than staying friends with the PM. I thought it was great journalism.
Now, look, I want to talk about the developing situation across the border from Canada. I called it cray-cray earlier. I mean, this presidential race is already going mad. We, of course, had this really random clip of Kamala Harris speaking with Joe Biden on the phone.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
And it is my great honor to have Joe's endorsement in this race.
You sure do.
And then, overnight, Donald Trump has gone all out attacking Kamala.
By the way, Kamala will not be your first female president. She will not be your first female president. It's not the way it's supposed to be. We're not supposed to have a socialist. Look, we're not going to be a socialist nation. We're not going to have a socialist president, especially any female socialist president. We're not going to have it. We're not going to put up with it. It's not going to happen.
Now, obviously, the left is up in arms, accusing Trump of terrible sexism there. But what do you make of it all?
It's been the most incredible 10 days in U.S. politics, I think, since the Kennedy assassination. And I choose that on purpose because Donald Trump came within a half inch of being killed. And by the way, the Secret Service's explanations are astonishingly weak. As you may know, the head of the Secret Service resigned in disgrace.
Kimberly
I think it was just yesterday.
Mm.
And then if they couldn't take Trump out, they realized that he would beat Biden. And so in the most bizarre manner, Biden, who hadn't been seen in public for nearly a week, just issued a written statement on Twitter. Who signed it? Was he under duress? Did he have his full mental capacity? He still hasn't given a proper address to the nation. It's very odd. And by the way, I know that in the UK and Canada there are parliamentary systems where parties can choose their own leader based on who's an MP. But that's not the American way. The American system has a president from outside the legislature. So how do you choose it? Well, you have the primary process. You have party members, millions of them vote. They didn't do that. Kamala Harris was chosen by the donors, I think. We don't even know who chose her. She has not gone through any of the system. It would be like, when Rishi Sunak became PM, at least he was an MP to begin with. It would be as if someone from outside Parliament altogether were simply appointed the Prime Minister and was never scrutinized or put through a process. It is so unusual, so anti-democratic, but I'm worried it might even work, Dan.
Well, indeed, because she's an empty vessel, isn't she? But she's the globalists' empty vessel. She is their choice. I mean, I love these comparisons, by the way, to the TV show Veep, because it is like we are watching a real-life Veep take place at the moment. But on the serious side, Ezra, as you point out, it feels like now leaders are being chosen by their puppet masters and anti-democratic coups on a regular basis. So in the UK, we saw the defenestration of both Boris Johnson and Liz Truss. Rishi Sunak, despite having been rejected by his own party in an overwhelming vote, within weeks was parachuted in. And yes, he was an MP, I give you that, but it was anti-democratic. He was not voted in by anyone to be Prime Minister, not his own MPs, not his own party members, and certainly not the British public. And with Kamala, what's incredible, isn't it, is it was the night of the debate. They realized we can't keep up this farce with Biden anymore. We've got to do something. And all of a sudden, the globalist political establishment cranks up into gear, and we're left with potentially the next president of the United States of America who hasn't gone through a democratic process. I think it is quite extraordinary. We are going to see Joe Biden tonight, aren't we? In an 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 a.m. UK time address from the Oval Office. But there's loads of questions, don't you think, about that, Ezra? Is it really going to be live? Has he written his speech? I mean, we do not know quite how serious the health condition that Joe Biden is suffering is right now. Is it really just COVID, or is there something more serious going on, given he could barely even walk up the steps to Air Force One?
And the lack of curiosity by the legacy media is astounding. We had about 2 weeks of real media criticism when they were trying to knock Biden out of office, like after his disastrous debate performance, where he clearly had some seniors moments, so to speak. The media said, all right, we're going to do more accountability journalism on Biden than we have in the last 4 years. That's over now, and the rehabilitation of Kamala Harris is in full gear. My reference to Rishi Sunak, you're right. The way he was imposed in the UK was very undemocratic. But with Kamala Harris, there wasn't even that fig leaf of, well, he actually won a local election in his district. Kamala Harris was just appointed. We don't even know the process. We don't even know if it's legal. She's a terrible communicator. Remember, she washed out of the primary 4 years ago without even 1% of the vote. She is grating. She has the personality and likability of Hillary Clinton. in terms of her ideology, she was literally ranked the most left-wing senator in the entire U.S. Senate, further to the left than Bernie Sanders. 100 out of 100. She was that far left. She's an extremist. She was put in charge of border security. What a laugh that is. She was a supporter of the Black Lives Matter rioters, and I say that because she literally fundraised for the rioters who was jailed. She is hardcore left-wing on all racial set-asides. She's a disaster in foreign policy. She refused to even show up for Benjamin Netanyahu's visit to Washington. She is a disaster, but don't think she can't be puffed up by 5 or 10 points in the polls with a total wall-to-wall support from the regime media. I don't think Donald Trump, who I thought a week ago Donald Trump was pretty much set to win, it is very much in play, and the deep state will do literally anything to stop Trump from winning.
Totally. Look, I am not one of these people who is relaxed about a Trump victory happening at all, because you've seen, as you say, the whole system come in behind Kamala Harris. It's interesting, you speak about the regime media. I was watching some of CNN's primetime coverage last night because I just wanted to know myself quite how biased they were. And my goodness, you would think Kamala Harris was a cross between Margaret Thatcher and Barack Obama, given the way that they were talking about her. This is coverage that I agree will have an impact on the polls. And this is all of the sort of electoral interference that goes on in a race like this. So I think Trump should be very concerned. Obviously, in hindsight, it was a big mistake for both the Trump campaign and the Biden campaign to have this unprecedented debate so early, because if they'd just left it at normal time, he would have been the nominee. It would have been too late to get him off the ticket. So that was a mistake for both parties.
Yeah. You know, remember that Joe Biden in the 2020 elections barely even campaigned. And he said, I forget the reasons they actually used. I think it was COVID.
It was during the COVID crisis, wasn't it?
So he didn't have big rallies. Everything was little video clips from the bunker. Like, I don't even think he traveled. I think that was to cover up how weak he was even back then. So if they can shove Joe Biden across the finish line when he was that cognitively disabled, I expect they'll run a repeat of that with Kamala Harris to avoid her from that cackling laugh, to avoid her saying crazy things, you know, in spur of the moment. I think you're going to have a very controlled, they'll just titrate her out in little drips and drops to control the message. And Donald Trump has a fight ahead of him. And remember, Republicans have to win beyond the margin of cheating, beyond the margin of lawyering. I mean, if Donald Trump's going to win this thing, it can't be a narrowly fought thing. And I think you're in for a few crazy months. And the whole world is in the balance, not just America, but think of Russia, Ukraine, think of Taiwan, China, think about the Middle East. Everything turns on the U.S. election, everything.
This is so consequential. So thank God for Rebel News, keeping these politicians honest. Really recommend everyone give you a follow on YouTube, because you are such a brilliant source, and I've loved everything that you've done over the past few years. So Ezra Levant, so great to have you for the first time on Outspoken today, but please come back soon.
I will. Thanks for being so welcoming. Cheers.
Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please do subscribe if you want lots more clips and interviews like that. Plus, if you want to watch our totally uncensored after show, then visit www.outspoken.live.